Well, hello and welcome to another Irving Feldspar adventure, tour, rant, whatever. I'm in Elmhurst, Illinois, along the Union Pacific tracks, the West Line, and I'm where the lumber yard used to be. Alexander and Franzen. Alexander Lumber. They controlled this whole area. Now, they sold out years ago. That was after 89, somewhere in there. I remember buying lumber here in 85. That bunker building, this is an underground reservoir now. The city of Elmhurst owns the property, and they have one of their 3 giant underground storage tanks right there. The city of Elmhurst has leased some of the surplus land to Elmhurst College, and Elmhurst College has their tennis courts over there. This red brick building to the right, that used to be the old District 46 headquarters. That was the grade school district back in the 60s and very early 70s. We're crossing the West Line right now, north, and we are going to the west. Now along here, this has changed a lot in my time. The tracks have always been here. There were a few more junction tracks going up to the quarry, and we'll get to the quarry in a few minutes. Businesses and things have changed along here. It's slowly getting better looking. Here's our Park District headquarters. So up over here, this is the quarry. There used to be a track right through that gate. Elmhurst Chicago Stone Company. Quarry is to the right of all those trees. The thing's like 400 feet deep. It's huge. There's actually 2 pits. You're not going to be able to see it from the car, of course. But they keep busy. Now, one of the things they do is they have to keep the road wet to keep the dust down in the area. I think it creates more mud, but now coming up, they got this secret road that goes out the Route 83, but they don't want to let ordinary taxpayers use it. So this is completely monopolized by all the concrete businesses in the area. So they get to have immediate quick access to 83, while the rest of us schlubs get to suffer and have to go through all the traffic hassles. We're in the middle of the 2 quarries here. This is like the one piece that didn't get mined. The quarry drops down like 300, 400 feet on either side here. You can see the little bit of a ridge. Now coming this way, this is 2nd Street. In the old days, you can get out in and out of 83 in all these little streets. Somehow I'm remembering the guy that lived along here somewhere. His nickname was Gizzard, and he grew weed in his backyard. Yeah, those old Elmhurst stories, they really make a difference, don't they? Anyways, okay, here's Salt Creek Park. I remember this park because in one of the big floods, I think it was 1972, the water from the creek, which is just ahead of us, maybe a couple hundred feet, the water from the creek went through the park and then went down into the quarry, and it washed away quite a bit of the topsoil. This whole area here is sandy. Kind of a sandy, stony soil, which is why the quarry came here in the first place. All the material was close to the top. It was a pioneer area. They needed building materials, so they started grabbing all that rock and sand. And as time went by, they started getting into real mining and locomotives and cranes, and quite a bit of this quarry built Chicago, built the western suburbs. The foundation of my house in South Elmhurst, probably the stone came out of this quarry. Okay, we're gonna go back over this thing. So we're going south now, and we're approaching the railroad crossing and the secret road that they don't want us taxpayers to use. Yeah, you know, it would be if the train is blocking the crossing here and it's stopped like it always is, wouldn't it be nice to make a right turn and get right out to 83? Okay, off on the right we got the field for Immaculate Conception, one of our Catholic schools in the area, and then we have Plunkett Park coming up, and City of Elmhurst Courts operation. This is their indoor fitness area. Orange fences in this town mean construction. That was something going back maybe 25 years. They started requiring all the builders to put some sort of fencing around these construction sites. And so that's a tip-off for us locals that a house is going to be torn down or radically modified. This track is the old Illinois Central, now the Canadian National. I got a lot of videos on that. So in the old days, back in here was the city public works garage. And this parcel was a completely separate parcel from all the other parcels. And I can't remember when it was. They redeveloped this whole corner of 83 and St. Charles. I came in off the back way from West Avenue. Now the store right in front of me, this is the old Sears Kmart. And this is the lawn and garden section of the old Sears Kmart. And the guy didn't even look. Didn't even look. Oh, there's a car there that could have hit me. I got a stop sign. Ooh. Well, anyways, if you go back to pioneer days, this was all a grassy field. The creek is ahead of us on the other side of 83 there. Head to the left where all the trees are. It's back in there. But across the eons, the creek used to flow on this side of Route 83. And if you look at the old aerial photos and the old maps and stuff, you can actually make out the old creek bed. Okay, Portillo's, and the original Portillo's was only, what, a couple blocks away from here? Man, that guy made a mint. Good food, it's quality food. I think it's also premium priced. So you're gonna get a good meal there, but expect to pay your, I don't know what it is now, $3 for a dog? $3 for a hot dog. And you might get some fries with it. I don't know what they do in England, what the Sassenachs do with their hot dogs, but around here you get a choice of having your fries in a separate little thing, or they can be wrapped up with the hot dog. And even though I've grown up in the Chicago area, lived here all my life, I put ketchup on my hot dog along with mustard, and I will not ever give in to the food tyrants. Mustard only. Who thought of that idea? The mustard executives? Okay, so we're looking at the Sears store here, and back in the pioneer days, before this got built, this was the old city cemetery. And the city cemetery here lasted up until, the early mid-1950s, somewhere in there. Being a sandy soil, the graves started shifting to the top of the ground. And when I read the city council minutes, there were some reports of the local boys bringing home souvenirs to their moms. You know, could you imagine that, bringing a femur or a skull home? Hey, Mom, look at this. Look what I found. Yeah. Well, anyways, the Sears Kmart, this shut down a while ago. But right about here is where the lawn and garden department was, and my suspicion is that if you're in there late at night, there's probably ghosties in there, ghouls, you know, all sorts of stuff going on. I don't know if that will ever top Peabody's tomb down in Oak Brook, but you know, local legend's a local legend. Back to the right here is where the used to be a standard station in the old days, and they had a U-Haul thing. There used to be a Dominic's Grocery over here. There's also an incredibly sad story here that I just don't want to repeat today. Okay, the buildings ahead of us. This was some of the first post-World War II construction in Elmhurst. Kind of smallish apartments, but they did their job, and I think 10, 15 years ago they were sold, remodeled. Oh, maybe it's more like 25 now. And the owner is making good money on the Elmhurst Terrace apartments. I'm on West Avenue facing south, where the road ends down there. That's the Prairie Path. That's the old Chicago Great Western and the Chicago Roaring Elgin. They've been doing work along here for a while. Now, Elmhurst used to have two hospitals. One of them was actually a sanitarium, and the sanitarium was just about right here in front of us to the left. I want to say Lindahl, the Lindahl Sanitarium. And if you know your history, and if you know who Eugene V. Debs was, well, he died there. Now, this has got to be the most screwed up road work I've ever seen in my life. Okay, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to die in my own hometown head on because they didn't do the signage correctly. No flagmen, no warnings of one-way road, anything. Here's the Abbey up on our left. They used to have a lot of rock and roll there in the 60s. Okay, now the road suddenly ends. Here's the railroad tracks again, the old Illinois Central. I'm going to swing past the high school here. So York Community High School, class of 1980 rules. There's the old gym. Underneath the gym is the basement track. And the basement track used to be the home for the emergency 100-man civil defense field hospital. The whole area got radically changed when they rebuilt the school. God, when was that? 2000, 2005, somewhere in there. Things have changed. The smoking area was right about here. Yeah, we had a smoking area. We had so many kids in the school, we had open campus. There were closed halls. You needed to have a pass to go through a closed hall. But the main halls, like this big front door right here, this was just open. You could come and go as you pleased. I don't know how many times I skipped classes so I could walk downtown Elmhurst, which is only about 4 or 5 blocks away. This is the new building they built. It's like an office building type construction. They put it up, they centralized everything in there. It's nowhere near as fun as going to school across 5 shifts like we used to do. My graduating class was something like 738. That was a small class. I knew somebody who was 5 years ahead of me. Their class was it was like 1,200 or 1,500 students. It like took forever to do the graduation. All right, so this little street right here, this used to go through in the old days. And then, in the interest of public safety, they made this cut off. Incidentally, the railroad tracks here have an interesting significance. In the old days, you didn't really want to have a fight in the school, because if you fought in the school, they would always scare the hell out of you by saying, "You'll be expelled. You'll be suspended." Well, you could get around that rule by going out to the railroad tracks and having your fight there. Heck yeah. Knock the hell out of each other there. Fun, good times. Now, ahead of me is the high school stadium. I don't know if you can see that too well, see the sign. That used to be Clarence D. East Field. Clarence D. East was a very popular coach, I believe, from the 1950s. They might still have a memorial there on the brick, but somebody decided that calling it the York High School Stadium was much more good than keeping it Clarence D. East Field. And I really wouldn't call this a stadium. It's an open piece of ground with some big bleachers, and the athletic field, grass, whatever it is one of those artificial surfaces that costs a hell of a lot of money, that the taxpayers really have no clue how much money they're putting into it for the very few people who utilize it for sports. Hey, I like football. I like high school football. But let them play on real grass. All right, the light's finally going to change. I missed the cycle the last time around. Here we go. All right, so you can get to see the football field. Okay, we're going to head east now. We're at Spring Road. And the old historic part of Elmhurst, going back to the days when we were Cottage Hill, that all came about from about 6 blocks up. Elmhurst was nothing, just some rolling prairie land. We are literally due west of the Chicago Loop. The center of Chicago, theoretically, is State and Madison. That's where all the addresses zero out. Well, Madison is a block and a half from my house, running east and west, and they kept all these streets running. So we are literally due west of the heart of the city of Chicago, and a lot of the trails came out of Chicago. St. Charles Road was a manufactured turnpike, a tollway. It was a toll road. It was a corduroy road with logs and dirt improved, and I think it lasted as a tollway for a few years before it became free again. But it was originally a trail, probably an Indian trail. Can you see this little bit of a hill coming up here? This is the hill that Cottage Hill is named after. Just crossing Cottage Hill Street, and the Rock Memorial is just to my left. The old Hill Cottage was right here, up on the high ground. It was a stagecoach stop, and since it was the Hill Cottage, it got its nickname, Cottage Hill, Hill Cottage. It became the little town, the hamlet of Cottage Hill. To my right, immediately to my right, we're coming up on York Street, and I'm going to double back on this. This is where the estate of Thomas Barbour Bryan was. Bryan was the man who in 1868 named the town Elmhurst, or rather he suggested that name. By 1868, there was a lot of people here, at least 300, and they were having problems with mail. And the postmaster said, if you ever want to get your mail, come up with a unique name for your town. And that's how Elmhurst began. Elmhurst devolves from the fact that the early pioneers had flooding. The town was flat, the water had nowhere to go, and they planted elm trees for shade and to suck up the water, and they planted a lot of arbor vitae to suck up the water. I'm driving down Arlington right now. This is a street that's getting changed up quite a bit. A lot of teardowns. The older homes from the 1880s, 1900s, 1920s, they're all being replaced. The word we've been using for 20-25 years in this town is McMansion, meaning it's kind of like a ticky-tack, cheap knockout sort of structure. That probably sounds incredibly cruel to the people who bought those houses. But, you know, there is good construction, and then there is the stuff that is like an edifice complex. So to the left here is the old Bryan estate. That lasted till about 1900. That's about when he died. He had willed the land to the Episcopal Church. The Episcopal Church tried to establish an orphanage here. The problem is the 30 kids all needed to go to school, and the locals did not want to pick up the tab. Church property, they don't pay any taxes. None of these kids paid taxes. If they went to school in Elmhurst, who's going to pay for the teachers, the kids, the buildings for these 30 extra kids? Well, if it happened now, there'd be an incredible lawsuit and stuff, and the town would have to take care of the kids. But in those days, the school said, no, you can't come in. And after just a couple of years, the orphanage failed. One of those dark stains of Elmhurst history. Now, the house up here on the left, as we're making the turn, you ever hear of the Tsar's daughter, Anastasia? One of the claimants to Anastasia stayed at that house in the late 1940s. I want to say DNA has since proven her to be a fraud. It's really a fascinating story. Okay, we're going to turn on Cottage Hill, and you're not going to be able to see it, I don't think. There's the Monument Rock right there. All right. So this street has the reputation of having some of the bigger houses and bigger real estate. When I grew up in town and I went to York, a Cottage Hill address was extremely impressive. Now we no longer have the one big dense core of the town with the rich people. Now we have a whole bunch of satellite McMansions with rich people around. We're coming up on Wilder Park. It's ahead of us to the left. This is like the Central Park for the city of Elmhurst. The white building in there, that's the old Lazadro Museum of Lapidary Arts. They bailed out of that building because it's functionally obsolete. They moved to an office tower in Oakbrook. The conservatory is to the right. Park District has done a really good job with the conservatory. And ahead of us to the right is Elmhurst College. Further down to the left is the notorious party house from the 1970s. Okay, there's the Veterans Memorial. Can't really see the flowers too well. There's the conservatory. Why, look at this. I can see right in there. Beautiful. You gotta go in there. You gotta go in there. And let the Park District know you like it. Okay, so here's the back end of the old Lazadro Museum. You should have seen the jade collection in there. Oh my God, they had all sorts of rocks. They had giant meteorites. They had all sorts of really cool stuff there. Now, growing up in town, this was our library. They had an addition that was brand new on the other end of it in the old days. So across almost 60 years, I was using that library all the time I went to school. And then they decided it was functionally obsolete. They tore down the addition, the library, and we'll go past it in a minute. They built an entirely new library. And then they took the old mansion. This was an old Elmhurst mansion, an old family house. And they completely rebuilt the inside over there. And so now you can have parties and things in there. All right, so there's the Veterans Memorial that represents pretty much all the wars. At this moment in time, I'd like to point out that if you are a Vietnam veteran, you automatically qualify for Veterans Administrative benefits. But if you are a Korea War veteran, you have to have cause to get benefits, or you're subject to the means test. Okay, do you see this big concrete thing sitting there? That's a survivor of the Chicago fire. That came from Chicago. It might have been on the courthouse, the old Chicago Cook County Courthouse, and it came over here. It was donated. Thomas Bryan at the Chicago fire, he sheltered people. You know, the train was still running and people came out of the city because there was nowhere to go, and Bryan sheltered something like 24 people at his mansion. I should also point out that Thomas Barbour Bryan was the guy that tried to save copy number 4 of the Emancipation Proclamation through a series of movements. It was eventually donated to the Chicago Historical Society, where they displayed it, but it perished in the big fire of October of 1871. To my left is Elmhurst College. There's the main gate. Elmhurst College, that goes back a long time too. It's now Elmhurst University. They decided to do a marketing spin. The graduates are going to be smarter now because it's a university, not a college. Okay. So here's the new library on our right. They went all out to build this library. I mean, we're talking the Taj Mahal effect here. They wanted an edifice, they got themselves an edifice. I mean, the old library didn't have anything drive-through. The new library does. I actually enjoy the library, I always have. And they got it organized, and it's not cluttered like it used to be in the old days. It used to be really nasty to go in there, and things were just hard to use. Now it's a lot easier. Okay, that's the back of the post office. And right over here, this piece of the parking lot and this open piece of land right here, this is where there used to be an office building, and my first paying video job was right here for a guy that did market research. I did videotaping of focus groups. All I had to do was sit for about 3 hours on a stool behind the one-way mirror, and I would pan the camera back and forth to whoever was talking. And the guy that ran the marketing company, he paid me good coin. And he was the guy also that sold me some of my first video equipment. So thank you, Roy. He's still around. I'm considered the man to be a genius. All right, this is the Elmhurst Art Museum over here. You ever hear of Mies van der Rohe, the architect? Lustrum Homes? Well, check out the Elmhurst Art Museum. You'll learn a lot about it. Part of the museum is an old home that's been remodeled. It was a concept house, and then the rest of it is new, and they have periodic exhibits, traveling exhibits, things like that. All right, now they got the streets all screwed up in this town. In the last 20 years, there's been a spate of building, and so these mid-rises have been going up. We don't really have any high-rises in this town, but we got a crap load of these mid-rises. And parking garages. All sorts of parking garages. And I've mentioned in previous videos about how the joke around here is how we're always getting new banks and restaurants. You know, they'll tear down something, you know, like the candy store and put up a bank. They'll tear down, you know, something else, put up a restaurant. So we're back out at York Street again. This big concrete building ahead of me there, that's the old Elmhurst National Bank. That was one of the original founding families of Elmhurst. The reason the railroad tracks are here is because the old railroad, the Chicago and Galena, which became the Chicago and Northwestern, which became the Union Pacific, they were poor. They were looking for donations of land. So there was this guy over here in Elmhurst. It wasn't Elmhurst, it wasn't even Cottage Hill. His name was Adam Gloss. And his thing was the railroad approached him and asked if they could have land. And Adam Gloss says, I will give you the land. And he gave him quite a bit of land. And he says, but the deal is, you got to build a station here at this little street, which was York Street. And Adam Gloss was very shrewd. He gave away some of that land, but his location on York Street by the new train station, well, he had a general store, which became a bank. He did all right. He did all right. In fact, let's take a quick drive past his monument. All right, so this is the Elmhurst Historical Museum, next to the Elmhurst National Bank. So Adam Gloss, his family, his descendants, they built the bank. They built this super house here. As the family grew and splintered, their holdings changed up. So Elmhurst ended up owning this building here. This became the city hall for the longest time. I remember when they had city stuff here. In a video I did a few weeks ago, Elmhurst Motocross Cops, I talked about going to court here. Yeah, I went to court here in the old days. And here's the back side of the Elmhurst National Bank. I don't know if you can see the gold eagle still sitting up there. Things be changing in this town. So this street is Park. And up ahead of us to the left, that's the Chop House. Now, that's probably, in my opinion, it's the premier restaurant in Elmhurst right now. I mean, they got really good steaks. That's what I like about them. But I remember when it was the Paradise Restaurant. The Paradise was a family restaurant, kind of a sit-down diner sort of thing. And I can remember in about 76 or 77, walking up here to visit with a friend of mine who was a busboy, and I'd order, you know, fries and a pop, and I'd make that fries and a pop stretch for about 3.5 hours, which was his shift, and we were just goofing off the entire day. He was diligent though. He ended up getting me a job not too many months later at the old Beef and Barrel in Lombard. You know, and his thing is he still remembers sophomore algebra class, and he was spacing out, goofing off. He was reading a magazine in class. I don't know what it was. It was probably Car and Driver. And teachers discussing theorems. I don't know if you remember your algebra or anything, but there's like associative principle, you know, and multiplication, associative principle of addition, that sort of thing. Well, he was doing theorems. You have to prove the theorem, and the teacher's up there on the board, and he got to one spot on the theorem, and he was asking questions. And then he suddenly realizes nobody's answering the question, and he notices my friend is goofing off, reading the magazine. So he says to my friend, "And what would be the answer to this?" And my friend was like the deer caught in the headlights. So he's sitting next to me, and I leaned over to him and I whispered, "True, the answer's true." And my buddy loudly with confidence goes, "True, the answer is true." And that poor teacher's looking at him, and the class is laughing. He goes, "No, the answer is the associative principle of multiplication. What the hell are you doing?" So, yeah. So in front of me is the United States Post Office. Secretary Morgenthau dedicated this building in like 1931. This is really old. This building is functionally obsolete. It's got a beautiful Works Progress Administration mural in the lobby. Part of it's been destroyed by modifications to the physical plant. But this this building should have been replaced by the 1980s, and the scandal around that is pretty much this. The post office in those days would build a brand new facility, if needed, if warranted, as long as the local municipality donated the land. Elmhurst knew that. Elmhurst had many chances to find parcels of land for the post office, but they never ponied up any land for the post office, and things have changed since then, so we are now stuck with this functionally obsolete building. And some of our mail's been coming from Villa Park and other places, and it's not like it was in the old days. And since the economy's gone to hell, that offer of building the free replacement building, that ain't gonna happen anymore. The reality will probably be we're gonna have to build our own post office. We'll probably have to pay for the people inside it too. So, way to go, former Elmhurst town fathers. Yeah, a lot of this town revolves around the tracks. I mean, St. Charles Road was the superhighway in its day, but the railroad tracks made Elmhurst develop. We were our own independent farm community, so to speak, but we were also part of the Chicago metropolis, and the money power from the economy, the economics out of Chicago is really what has kept Elmhurst going. All right, this parking garage here, 150 years ago, there was a little railroad turntable there, and there was a switch track that came right across over here. The building to the left is brand new. And we're coming up on the station. So that Elmhurst Railroad Station is going to be replaced in the near future, assuming the funds are still there. That's like the 1960 train station, which has approached functional obsolescence. I believe the existing structure is the third train station here in Elmhurst, and this is central to the economy. You know, when things are booming, all the parking spots in this town are filled. All the parking garages are filled. Everything along the tracks is filled. Now, There ain't much going on. I don't see Dave over there. Dave usually sits by the bench. The old Pink Elephant shop, they shut that down. Up on the corner used to be a Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae is gone. Now it's got some sort of micro pub, or they open up the windows in that place and you can booze it up right on the sidewalk. Here's York Street again. This is the heart of the downtown here. The building on the corner ahead of us, that's another one of those ancient buildings. Come on, man, what the hell? The guy is going so slow across the tracks that the traffic behind him from blocks away is caught up. All right, the heart of the Elmhurst downtown, York Street. We're coming up on the York Theater. We're coming up on Schiller. This has changed up in my time. Back in the 70s, they even tried to do a mini mall here. Planters in the middle of the street. Off to the right there, that's where the Yorktown restaurant used to be. That's gone. Okay, here's the York Theater coming up on the left. That's now a multi-screen cinema. The thing I will say about the York Theater, I was there the summer of 1980. That was, you know, they were a second-run theater as long as I can remember. They were rerunning the film Grease that summer, and this buddy of mine, he was an usher at the theater, and he'd get us in for free, and we'd sit in the back of the place drinking beer and smoking cigarettes, and we'd go down into the catacombs under the theater. You know, there was all sorts of things to do in this town. Especially when you're bored. Bored suburban kids get into a lot of trouble. Okay, the hideous looking limestone building there. That's where we fired my son's pediatrician. Ugly, ugly building, and the one next to it is even worse. Somewhere along here, the Dulles Cleaner still exists. And right here to the right, there's Dulles. And he's sitting out in front. That was the old Athenian Fireside restaurant over there. And I remember going there about 1972 watching The Belly Dancer. Well, with the parents. There was somebody who almost got hit by a car. There's the train station again. So I think there's like 3 bus routes that meet up here at the train station. Okay, this time we're going to cross York Street. So the underpass, this bridge thing we're going to go over, this is new from the 70s. I remember that. Police station off to the left, that's new. It's now got to be replaced. Right in here is where the dairy used to be. There used to be a dairy, and one of my favorite stories was there was a guy that grew up here in the 30s, and he'd go over, it was called Raby's Dairy, R-A-B-E-S, yeah, Raby's Dairy. He'd go over there and he'd buy 2 fudgesicles, and he would bring the fudgesicles up to a guy right here to the right. There used to be a switch tower, and he would hang out. He would hang out with the guy in the switch tower, and he'd give one of the fudgesicles to that guy, and he'd eat the fudgesicle, and they'd watch the trains. So here we're crossing the underpass again. That crossing we just went over, okay, maybe we should go over it again, huh? It's always fun crossing York Street multiple times. There is a train coming up, so hopefully I'll be able to beat this train. So 3 years ago, I'm down here and got to the other railroad crossing, and there was a moving truck stuck on the crossing. I made a video. This trailer blocked the west line. For whatever reason, that video has got over 4 million views. People like watching moving trucks stuck on the tracks. So right up here to the right, where that white pickup is, semi-trailer got stuck crossing the tracks, and I filmed the whole thing. And would you believe 4 million people from around the world have watched it? Yeah. All right, we'll go this way. So this is Arlington, and I'll show you some of the sites along here. A lot of change in town. I mean, like I said, a lot of the old buildings are being changed out. Used to be a very old house there. Look at that. Very old house here. Look at that. Coming up on this corner to the left, very expensive house. Now this block here I know very well because in the 70s a friend of mine lived in one of the houses here. His house is still here, but one of the neighbors' houses is gone, been replaced. Then as now, the proximity to the railroad tracks makes the value of these homes. If you live here, you only got a block and a half to walk to the tracks. But people don't live the way they used to. And things change. Off to the left, you really can't see it, but there was an old church parking lot that's been sold off. This house here, this is one of my favorites going back 50 years. I always thought this was a beautiful house. This is in the Emery subdivision, and that might have been one of the Emery mansions. I'm still confused about that one. Now, Frank Lloyd Wright had a house built over here. Okay, this is a Frank Lloyd Wright. It's been up for sale continuously for the longest time. Sign goes up, sign comes down. It just sold for the value of the land. It's not going to be torn down as far as I can tell. But here's the problem with Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright, when he built the home, he told you how you were going to live, and he really lacked the ability to adapt. All right, now here on the left, this is the Walter Burley Griffin house. I don't know if you can see it too well, but Walter Burley Griffin was part of that whole group of architects, Burnham, the Burnham Plan, Frank Lloyd Wright, and all of them. And about the time this house was up and running, I believe Walter Burley Griffin and his wife, who never gets any credit, designed the city of Canberra, Australia. Canberra? Yeah, they designed a whole capital city. So we're on Arlington. I'm gonna pull a U-ey here. Okay, this was the Congregational Church's parking lot, and for money reasons they just had to give up the land. So there's going to be about 4 houses built over there. Now, it was like 1977 thereabouts, the President of the United States, James Earl Carter, visited Elmhurst, and for the life of me, I can't remember which house it was. It was here in Arlington somewhere. I can't remember which side of St. Charles it was. I think it was the other side of St. Charles. I could be wrong. Anyways, Carter came to spend the night, and that was one of his gimmicks, was to be the down-home sort of guy. He liked to carry his own luggage, supposedly, at the airport. He liked to be the everyman. So he came to Elmhurst, and one of his supporters, local supporter, ran, I think, some of the DuPage County elements of his campaign for president, stayed the night at this gentleman's house. Well, we knew that this was going to happen, and early on in the afternoon, the crowd started forming. I mean, right after school. And by the time the president showed up at about 9 o'clock at night, the street here was mobbed. I think it was right up here. I remember, if I could find the corner house, I can find. It'll be on the left, be on the odd side of the street. Might have been that house there. Man, they replaced everything. Yeah, I think I just found it, and I think it's been replaced. How do you like that for history? Okay, so I'm going to stick my neck out and say, this was the block here. So not this house on the corner, but there used to be another house where the new house is, the McMansion. And that was where Carter stayed. And then I remember the garage of this house was used by the United States Secret Service and the Pentagon as the emergency command center. If they were going to fight a war that night, it would have been fought out of that garage. Now, a legendary story is that two guys my year at York, class of 80, were up in their bedroom window across the street in one of these houses. I don't know which one. I don't remember their names. But they were smoking weed up there. And apparently the Secret Service sees all and knows all, and so without them even hearing the door, suddenly a Secret Service agent appeared in their bedroom and is like, "You know who that is? That's the President of the United States. Do you know how to show some respect?" Oh my God. So I still am not clear on that. If that story is real, if it happened, if whatever. I'd like to hear that one. I'd like to hear confirmation. Okay, here's St. Charles Road again. We're right across the street from one of Elmhurst's newest parks. The Lutheran Church, Redeemer Lutheran, which was originally part of the Lutheran Church up at 3rd, but the schism in the 1920s made the Redeemer crowd come down here. And Redeemer is off to the left, and you won't be able to see it until I make the turn. St. Charles is busy this morning. It's a Friday morning at 10:25, July of 2020, end of July. So that's their parish hall, and the church was poor, so what they just did is they sold that parish hall. There's the church. They just sold the parish hall and the land to the Elmhurst Park District. They were able to get some much needed cash, and the not city of Elmhurst, but the Elmhurst Park District and indirectly Elmhurst residents get the benefits of a brand new park. They're going to keep the structure. The structure is going to be a senior center. I'm at York and St. Charles, looking west. That little bit of a hill ahead of us is the original Cottage Hill. To the left of us on that corner is the Thomas Barbour Bryan Estate. That's been built up over the years. He even established a church in town, Bird's Nest Chapel on his estate. And then later he built a separate plank building on the estate, and then it moved north after 1900. So now we're going south on south on York Street, or do you say York Road? The oldest house in town was moved down here. And I can never keep track of it. I think I just passed it. One of the problems Elmhurst has is they never grew up out of their pioneer concepts of the streets. So all these streets go back, like 175, 180 years, and they were made for horse and buggies, and they never really figured things out. Let's go off this way. This is South Street. Used to be two railroads that came through here, and if you look to the right, ahead of us to the right, that's the Chicago and Great Western Railroad Station. It had the tracks closest to us. The right-of-way was shared, not so much shared, but paralleled each other to the Chicago, Aurora, and Elgin Interurban Railway, which some people might call a trolley. Somebody's dog or something all by itself back in there. This has become a very valuable part of town, and there's all sorts of new construction and mega houses and stuff going up here. Oh, the dog does have an owner. Okay. So when you're really ancient in town like I am, you get to make arcane references to stuff that's no longer there. See that building straight ahead? That's where the Brown's Chicken used to be. Yep, there was a Brown's Chicken there. And the Brown's Chicken was inside an old gas station that had been remodeled. And off to my right was another place where there was another old gas station. This is a horrible, horrible, horrible place to drive around, especially when school lets out. We've also had a number of pedestrians and bicyclists that have been hit by cars through here. The old Chicago, Aurora, and Elgin became the Illinois Prairie Path, which is really cool because it was one of the original bike paths, hiking trails in the whole country, ever. Which is really neat. The building to the left there, that's the flower shop, Carousel Flowers. That was the original bank. To the right, that was the old York State Bank. Next to it was the liquor store, and on the corner was the bar, which went by the name of The Office. Which always gives me a giggle, because I could always see people calling home and saying, yes, sweetheart, I'm going to be late. I'm still at the office. Coming up on the right is the old Illinois Central tracks again, and this used to be a little mini industrial area. There was a bulk oil plant in here, and off down to the right there was several tracks. The Illinois Central had a passenger station here, they had a freight station here, and then in 1970 thereabouts there was an Amtrak platform here. You can call that an Am Shack. And right about where that pickup just went, that's where the sidetrack came across. To the left is York Commons Park and Fire Station number 2. Used to be a house here, and the Drum greenhouses were here in the old days. And this is also where Southside Creek used to run through here. We're notorious for flooding down on the south end, and nobody seems to realize there was a creek that's been buried and forgotten. It goes from this park to Madison School to, I believe it's Jackson School, to Eldridge Park, and to the creek. At one time, South Elmhurst tried to become its own community of South Elmhurst. They thought that the trolley line and the Great Western Line, which were the last tracks in the town around 1890, 1900, that would make the town, but the idea never took off. Visitation Church is up here to the left. Elmhurst is a largely Catholic town with the three congregations. I see Viz, and I think St. Domitilla is the one up on the north end. Huge complex, huge church, huge school. They got a grade school here, which I believe is now K through 8. But in the old days, would have been only 1st through 8, because the public schools had the only kindergartens. Strange, but true. Okay, we're coming up on the York and Butterfield Business District. I've got a lot of videos down here. A lot of change in my day. Things are really cooking down here. So that BP, I know the people who run the place, and I got a lot of videos that either start or end over there. This is Butterfield Road. This is my end of town. This would be like my ground zero for my life, like right here, York and Butterfield. York is like an improved street. Just before my time, the state and the county came out here and they changed York Street around. We're gonna go and hop onto Old York Road for just a second. This is Lexington, Killer Lexington. I just did a video about some of the deaths down here from the hit and runs, and this is a particularly dangerous intersection. This is Old York Road. This was the old Pioneer Trail, the old Indian Trail. People need to realize that the Indians were intelligent. The Native Americans were very intelligent. They weren't stupid. They made their trails based upon what made life easier for them. If they had to get from somewhere to somewhere, they didn't want to walk over the highest hills, nor did they want to walk in the lowest ground where the swamps and creeks were. They chose the happy medium. So not very high, not very low. They're not going to get their feet wet too often, and they're not going to kill themselves climbing over hills and ridges. But when you get down here to the very end, this is Roosevelt Road, kind of in the valley. Let's see if I aim the car this way. Can you see those cars over there? That's Roosevelt Road, and that's the interchange for York Street, York Road. That's been changed around. It's all flood zone. It's all swamp. You look at the old maps, it's nothing but a bog, a swamp. Now coming up here, this is Elmhurst, one of Elmhurst's newer parks. This is going to be our dog park. This was the old trailer court. And there were 2 trailer parks, one on either side of Roosevelt. They got established post-World War II. They had their own sewage disposal system, and that's what killed them. As long as they had the original system and could repair it, they were grandfathered. But they got to the point where they could no longer fix it, repair it, and the replacement cost of a new sewage system was way more than any amount of rents could recover. So both trailer parks shut down for that reason. The land stood vacant for a while, and then it got purchased by the Park District. Interesting series of events there. This is McKenna Court. This used to be a junkyard. Yeah. So the guy that had the junkyard decided, well, he was sitting on some pretty valuable land, and he did the math. and he found out that he could easily get rid of all the junk, take care of any pollution issues, build the houses, and still make a nice profit. Okay, looking back across some of the low area, that's York Street up there. That really tall building over there, that's the Oakbrook Terrace Tower. That's a Helmut John design, Helmut John. Tallest building in DuPage County. I've never really cared for it. I've never really cared for his architecture. So we're coming up Old York Road, and straight ahead you can see the little grassy strip there. That's where it went out and went up to Butterfield. They really changed it, and the church up there now, Yorkfield Presbyterian Church, they were able to somehow get a hold of that little piece of land, and part of their parking lot is Old York Road. So you can see how York Street went straight through here and hooked into the existing right-of-way just up ahead. By the way, that's one of the old Jewels over there. There was another Jewel over there that was closer to the highway. This is Lexington. Oh, the lilies have all come up. That looks nice. They just improved Lexington a couple years ago. They added these little curb things. The Yorkfield neighborhood's unincorporated, DuPage County. It has Elmhurst mailing address. For years, they had their own volunteer fire department. It's notable that for the most part, no sidewalks, it's ditches. It's a low service area, meaning low taxes, and that is what brings people to Yorkfield. However, the economics of Elmhurst are changing up, and that means that the unincorporated lands are even more valuable, and Elmhurst has been nibbling away, and we keep taking more and more of it. Notable over here is where Yorkfield Grade School used to be, K through 6. Let's see. That kind of, the house with the blue flag in the front there with the brick driveway thing, that was the neighbor's house. The red brick house is where the school property started. By the way, the Yorkfield class of 1974 rules. And then it went all the way up to right about here, and then off to the back side. We'll go over there in a minute and take a look at it. So this hill up ahead of us, this is part of that big central ridge that pushes through Elmhurst. The high ground down here is going to be about 700 feet above sea level. Over by the creek, it's about 650 feet above sea level. So in the town, from the high ground to the swamps, you have about a 50-foot difference. Okay, this is Cedar Avenue, Cedar Street. We're going to take this to the end. Elmhurst is right up against a bunch of expressways and highways and stuff, and that's what's influenced our boundaries. Down here, these streets would have gone out onto Roosevelt in the old days, but after the 1960 improvements, they were all cut off. Roosevelt Road, Illinois 38, is a limited access highway through Elmhurst. So no pedestrians, no bicycles, no nothing. So here's a house completely surrounded by cattails. And the story behind this house is that 80, 100 years ago, there was a pond here, and somebody filled in the pond to take advantage of the parcel to build the house. I'm not sure if the basement floods or not, but the upper part does stay dry. Over here, there's a little creek that runs over the road back in here, and I'm only coming back in here because this is the one end of the trailer park. You can see the highway signs. That's Roosevelt Road down there. You see how the difference in the elevations is? Okay, so that's 1960, you know, from 60 years ago construction. This road here is the only road in and out of what we call no man's land. I did a whole video years ago back in here. I'm not going to go very far. So these expressways I was talking about, as they got built, little neighborhoods had edges taken out here and there. Pieces. I mean, just gone. So this is the only way in and out of here, but you go back 60, 70 years ago, this was just kind of like an isolated, unincorporated neighborhood. We're in Cook County here. And people lived here because they wanted, you know, the trees and stuff like that. Actual people. There's deer in here. I've seen deer in here. I've seen all sorts of animals. A girl that went to my grade school, she had a pony. No, she wasn't rich. It was just a matter of the family somehow was able to get a pony, and they had a piece of land where they could pasture it, and they had a shed, and so she had a pony. That was back in the days when I can remember people riding horseback down Butterfield Road. So yeah, it's really nice back in here. This is a real nice difference from what you usually see in town. Maybe someday the forest preserves will take it over, the park district or something. It's not developable in a lot of ways because of getting the water and the sewer back here. There's also a, I don't know what you call it, Buddhist monks. Buddhist monks live back here. They got some sort of monastery or something going on here. This highway bridge, this is 88, the Ronald Reagan Tollway. All right, we're coming back up on the trailer park. Okay, can you see the difference in the elevation here? That, by the way, straight ahead is pretty much where the old trailer park used to be. It's now being used as a material yard for a lot of road construction. And this was the back end of the trailer park. I think they had a street that was kind of like an oval, and then they spaced the trailers out about every 10 feet or so. I don't know how many trailers were back here, at least 50. I don't know. Somebody could help me out with that too. So let's head back over towards Yorkfield School. So Yorkfield, they started putting in the houses in the 40s. I think in the very late 30s, they graded the area, and the houses were starting to be constructed. 38, 39, 40. I think things stopped for a short while. World War II, and then it got going again. Post World War II, baby boom, all that, people wanted a place to live, so the area became popular, and a lot of people liked living by Elmhurst, but they didn't like Elmhurst taxes. They didn't like paying any taxes, and so they gravitated towards the area. Now, one of the neat things about the history of Yorkfield is somewhere, and I haven't established where yet, but I have a suspicion. In Chicago in the very early 30s, there was a World's Fair. It was called the Chicago Century of Progress. And they did a lot of landscaping for the Century of Progress. And when they did the landscaping, they needed dirt. And they came to DuPage County for black dirt, and they harvested a lot of dirt from Yorkfield. Where? I'm not sure, but I have some good guesses. Back on Cedar, heading north. So this is Lexington here. This is the street I came off of. And we're going to go up one to Harrison. This is a lot closer to where I grew up. I'm within 3 blocks of this point here. I had maybe 2.5 block walk to school. And in those days, this street was only half a street. On the left was the street. To the right, the house in the corner was an empty lot. There were houses to the right, but none of this stuff to the right here was here, and different houses. And we'll do some navigation here to help you out. This is like Harrison Court or something. This is a cul-de-sac at the back end of the old Yorkfield School property. Where that person is mowing their lawn, that was where one of the paths went across the empty fields to get to Yorkfield School. There's a little low spot right there. That's where there was a little bridge. Right where the car is was a giant ditch culvert thing. And there was a bridge that went over the culvert, and that side of the park had their own fancy path to get to school. And right here was the playground for the school. All right, these houses to the right, this was, let's check this out. Everything has changed up so much, it really makes an effort, it really takes an effort to figure things out. Okay, Red House was built atop of an existing house. This house was school property. All right. Now we're about to turn on the Fern Avenue. Fern Avenue did not exist. There were no houses here. And I love telling my Arbor Day story. The very first Arbor Day, the kids from Yorkfield School came out and we planted trees, and we planted them around the old athletic field. Ahead of us, bordered by these streets, was the old school, grade school athletic field. And on Arbor Day, the janitors, probably Mr. Bergman and Mr. Courtney, they dug holes for each class to plant a tree. My class planted a tree. It was either this one on the front yard or that one there. Those were the trees that Yorkfield School contributed. I think they might be the only 2 trees that lasted, that survived. This was a great time to be growing up. I was able to walk through the fields to get to school. So what's the story about the black dirt and where everything was harvested? Well, odd sort of stories here. This is the back side of the Essex house. This goes back to the 1860s. This was one of the original houses along Butterfield Road, which in those days might have been the Warrenville Road, was a stagecoach road. And this is the original structure area here, and this is the high point. And over the years, the grade has been changed. So I've been telling you I walked through these fields to get to school, and here's what happened. Being a little kid, you explore, and walking through here, there were sidewalks that were ripped up. There were catch basins that were ripped up. What had happened was somebody had tried to build a subdivision in here, and they had laid out the streets in a different manner. So the streets would have gone out to Butterfield. So Fern, where I just was, would have gone out to Butterfield. This is Linden coming up here. It's a T intersection to the right, but it would have gone out to Butterfield. So at some point in time, somebody came around and changed everything up. And I think that might have been back in the 20s and 30s, if it like follows other Elmhurst history. Somebody laid out a subdivision and it sat idle for a long time. Okay, so here we are. This is where that little bridge was I was telling you about. This used to be a section of the trails here. This is now the flood trough, the Harrison Street flood trough. And it's actually dry right now from what I can tell. They just improved this in the last couple of years. Now right up here is where they found the taxi in 1980 or 81. Cab driver had been murdered by a guy who went to Yorkfield School. Alright, so we're back on Yorkfield Avenue, and getting back to what I was saying about the dirt harvest and everything. I think what had happened was the area was open for development. Somebody had come in and they put in maybe sidewalks and curbs and catch basins and stuff. And that's when the Century of Progress was going, and somebody came in, and it was this area here that got scraped for dirt, and that dirt went into the city for the Century of Progress. I'm not sure where that was. I think it was down about 55th, about the Museum of Science and Industry, maybe? Somewhere in there. So in my day, none of these houses, streets were not here. The opening for this street, though, was right here, and we're coming up on it. Okay, so the house to the right there, that was there. The house to the left there, that was there. There was like 10 feet of street right here. You can come off of Cedar and there'd be 10 feet of street. And over time, there's been additions to these houses. Butterfield Road, Illinois 56, also known as the Warrenville Road in the old days. We're coming up on the high point on the maps. This is Hillcrest here, and according to the map, this is 706 feet above sea level. This is part of that ridge that goes northwest to southeast. Okay, coming up here on the right, this is the DuPage Water Commission. It sits in the city of Elmhurst despite it being in Cook County. Berkeley is the incredible disappearing town, because every time there's a new project, somebody takes a big bite out of them. Well, that's what happened here. Now, in my day, this was open fields to the left and some houses scattered around at the end of the street there. There was motocross trails in there for bikes and mini bikes, and there was a couple old sheds up on Butterfield that were businesses. One of my neighbors had an HVAC shop for a while up there. So the stop sign here, this is Harrison. And the next one is Lexington, and the only reason I'm going down this far is I wanted to show you some of the development. They just did a lot of work here along the tollway. Alright, so this is Lexington. That's kind of looking west, looking south. There's that big noise wall there. That's the tollway. The Tri-State and 88, the Reagan. This is where there were several houses and stuff. This is reserve land for the DuPage Water Commission. They were supposed to build a new reservoir back here, but that plan got pushed back. They've turned it into a wild prairie area, which is kind of neat. I have a friend of mine who's very cynical and says, you know, prairie my butt. All they're doing over there is getting out and mowing the grass and taking care of it. And then I thought of it that way. I said, wow, that's brilliant. That's great. So yeah, this is an actual little street here on the right, and it got cut off for the Water Commission. You see this hill here? This hill is not a real hill. There's an underground water tank. It goes down about 40 feet and up about 10. I don't know how much water it holds, but this is the main tank for the DuPage Water Commission. And all the fresh water for DuPage, the vast majority of DuPage, comes through this facility here to the right. We are right on the county line here. This is High Street in Elmhurst and Cadwell. We're gonna go in Cook County. Gonna go up in here for just a moment and show you a couple other things. So there used to be a family named Darmstadt that had been a pioneer family and been farming here for years, and they owned all this land back here. And Mr. Darmstadt right here had his house and barn, and it was a pleasure to interview him back about 1980-81. Interesting guy. Now, he had owned all this land back in here, and he sold a good piece of it to the Green Stamp Company. Green stamps were an early form of loyalty program. You'd go to the grocery store, you buy groceries, they'd give you stamps. You go to the gas station, buy your gas, they'd give you stamps. You put the stamps into a book, then you filled the book up. The more books you can fill, the better the redemption possibilities. This was a redemption facility, and you could come here and bring your books, and they had a catalog, and you could walk in and trade in your stamps for merchandise. I have no idea who these guys are or what they're doing back here. Well, anyways, green stamps lasted from like 1960. Oh, you gotta like a car like that. 1960 to 1995. Then they moved down to Georgia. They left a different division which got spun off, which was called Motivation. I actually worked for the Motivation facility company. Now, right up in here, there was a mid-rise office tower, low-rise office tower. Now, it's on my channel. It's called Office Tower Dies. You can kind of see inside of it, but that was a 6 or 7 level tower. 2 basement levels, a double-sized lobby level, and then it was 4 floors. And the building was a young building, and they tore it down. This is tollway construction here, communication wires. So the big warehouse to my right here, they had a train track that went inside it, and it fed back to the Illinois Central. So this